Okay, so we are welcoming Maggie to the group, and we're going to talk about Maggie's experience in building her house. And I think she already knew Brooke or she worked with Brooke or whatever, but I have no questions on this one, ladies. So maybe if you could just give us a little bit of information about your process, and Brooke, if you want to chime in and maybe clarify, certain aspects of building a house from the ground up, lot purchasing, whatever, and take it away.
Okay. Well, I actually came to Costa Rica originally in January of 2015 after doing, frankly, several years of research about where I wanted to live once I retired. And I was fortunate enough to land a lovely rental apartment actually in someone's home. And I lived there until I did buy my lot. Again, here in San Luis, the same place where I was renting. All right, so I lived in that apartment for 2 or 3 years, and then in the interim, my father became ill back in the States. I went to take care of him. He passed away, and then when I came back, I knew that I wanted to set down my roots here and live in Costa Rica, so I wanted to have my own home. Luckily for me, in the interim, I got to know Brooke, and so she was my go-to gal to help me look for property. And she did take me to see several properties in several communities. I already had lived in San Luis and knew I liked it here, but we did investigate other areas, San Ramon, for instance, and I don't know if we went to Naranjo or not, but was very, very fortunate to find a property. Oh, thank you very much. Just right up the street, actually, from the residence I had been living in when I was renting. So I had an established group of friends here. I knew the area very well. I liked the area. I was very happy here in Gracia. So Brooke was very kind to call the owner of a property that I had my eye on that everybody said he'll never sell. And the next day when she came to pick me up and take me to look at properties, she drove out the driveway, went up the road 50 meters and turned left, and I thought, where are we going? And she had called the night before and found out that the man was interested in selling the property. So that's how I ended up getting that particular lot.
Can I just ask a question though? Why did you decide to get a lot as opposed to just purchasing a house?
Well, we did go and look at several houses, and I found one house that I did like. I really liked it very much, but it was on a very long, rocky, craggy road, narrow, death trap in my mind. And so therefore I passed on that particular house. And we saw other houses, but I just had this feeling that I needed to buy, or rather build my own home to be happy. I hadn't had my own home in over 30 years, and so I just wanted to put my stamp on it and get exactly what I wanted, which is what I did.
So you met Brooke, and she took you down to the property, and then what was the next step from there?
Well, actually, I was still at that point going back and forth to the States to settle my father's estate, and Brooke was wonderful. She got me immediately in touch with the attorney that she uses, and we got all the documentation together. I had to fly back to the U.S., and so I gave power of attorney to my friend whose home I'd been living in. She's become like a sister to me. And she and Brooke actually went to the closing and closed on the property for me before I could come back and then start with the building process.
And how was that? Contractors? How did you find
different?
Builder?
Well,
did you have to have an architect? What?
I did. Well, yes. Oh, it was required. I think is it required to have an architect?
Yes, because
okay.
they have to submit the plans to San Jose. You have to get approved.
Okay. Yes. I am not an architect, okay? But I did design my own house. While I was in the States, I was up hours and hours and hours designing my house. I did the entire floor plan and turned it over to the architect. He really didn't have to do anything for the money he charged.
Wow.
Anyway,
As is the case sometimes.
He submitted the plan and it was approved, and in the interim, I already knew who I wanted to build the house because the home I had been living in as a renter was built by this man and his father 13 or 14 years ago. And so, and I knew my friend trusted him and that he did quality work. So that's how I found my builder. And
The building process took how long?
Started November.
I started the week of Thanksgiving in 2018, and I moved in August 7th, 2019.
So a year. But they don't work in the rainy season, right?
They do work in the rainy
They
season
do work in the rainy season.
as much as
inside.
they can.
It's sometimes better because they have to keep the concrete wet, I think. So I think in some ways.
Well, I was fortunate, I guess I would say, in that they started in November, which was the dry season, to do all of the, getting the rebar, getting the concrete block, foundation and perimeter, wall perimeter, etc. So for the first several months, when they were doing all the stuff without a roof, etc., it was dry season. But of course, then the rainy season came, and they were doing mostly inside work. There was still a little, like concrete work, the driveway, etc., that we had to kind of time to get that in before the rains would come. But it all, they've been doing this, they know what they're doing. It is a very from my perspective, stressful situation, because it's so different from building a home in the States. I mean, it's entirely different. And that is the one thing I would advise people: if you're planning to come here, buy property, build a home, as Brooke said earlier, patience. Patience is a virtue. And your expectations have to be more realistic. And I think it's good to have somebody like Brooke to talk to, because she has lived here so long. She's been in the industry for that many years. She's been through this with many, many clients. I'm surprised she's still speaking to me. We had several conversations where I was probably hysterical or on the verge
It's a
of
stressful
hysterics.
thing to build a house.
Woo! and you just have to remember, it is not like building a house in the United States. It's completely different. And the timelines are going to be a lot different. They don't have the equipment and tools that builders and construction companies have in the U.S. But I'm in awe of these people who build a home here, and they build a quality home. They are hard workers. They are good-hearted people. They want to please you. They want you to have a home that you're proud of, and that they're proud of, to say that they built that. And so,
well, I will say it's certainly a beautiful home, because I've been there. I mean,
thank you. I'm very, very happy and content.
Yeah, it turned out really good. Brooke, do you have anything that you would add to the whole building process as far as Costa Rica? Anything, tips or like a timeline of like what happens when you're actually purchasing a property and then you want to build on it?
Well, there are certain documents that you need to get before you even purchase the property, which we did. You need to get something from the city of wherever you're purchasing, which is called an uso de suelo, or a land use sheet. And that tells you how much of the land you can cover, what you can build basically, and whether or not you can build. You have to be so careful here because, like I said before, there's underground water. There's various reasons why you might not be able to build on a property that you purchase. So once you have the uso de suelo, sometimes you even need to go down to San Jose and pick up another document that if there's a river that borders the property or is on the property, you'll need that document so that you get the setbacks, because the government of Costa Rica owns all water. So that's something that you always have to keep in mind if you're going to build. I think that when Maggie was talking about your expectations here, everything was done by hand, right? There were no I mean, they came in and they did
Graded.
level it, and they graded it, and then compacted it. Everything else was done by hand.
Yeah.
So, it slows things down a little bit, but I think it might help with quality too, because somebody's watching every single thing that's happening.
Well, and the whole thing with the rebar, how far they put that rebar down into the ground before they put the concrete walls up, is amazing. But, we do have little earthquake tremors here, and I don't feel like the house is going to slide off the foundation and down the hill. Another thing people might not be aware of is here in Costa Rica that all homes, as far as I am aware, most homes are built of concrete block. the exterior walls. And in older builds, I think even the interior walls. Now they have, I don't know if it's cement board or what they call it.
Fiberglass board. There's
But it's not, what do we call it in the United States?
green board.
Sheetrock.
Sheetrock, thank you.
Gypsum.
Well, that's it. It is not sheetrock because again, the high moisture content here would be a great
Deterrent.
avenue for mold, lots of mold, which you don't want in your house. So my interior walls are the newer material, which is like a cement board or whatever. And I'm very happy with the house. This house is so solid and so quiet because of that thick concrete block foundation and exterior walls. And I do feel very safe in my house. I don't feel like there's much of anything that's going to shake it or send me down the mountain. One of the things too I wanted to mention was before I bought this particular lot, and I think that I was still working with you, but a friend of mine had told me that there was a property on this particular road that we're on right now that was possibly for sale. So my friend and I, whose home I was living in, went and looked at it, and I was this close to buying it. And this is why you need Brooke and attorneys and so forth. The man wasn't doing anything shady. Yes, he wanted to make the deal for sure, which is understandable. But I had an engineer come out because the lot itself that was level was very small, and the property went out extensively, but it dropped down into a gully. And I said, well, I would want dirt brought in to fill that in because I want the house out there because the view was there, and this little small part of land in the back would be the parking, the driveway, etc. So when we brought the architect, or the engineer rather, and he looked at the property, he said, well, yeah, you can do that, but you wouldn't be able to build for 3 years because when you bring in fill dirt, and because of all the 6 months of rain here, you have to allow enough time for that dirt to settle, compact, etc., before you could be able to safely build on that land. I had no idea. And the other thing was when you brought all that fill dirt in, then on the side where the property line ended, before the next person's property, I would have to have built a huge rock retaining wall, which would have been probably cost prohibitive from my perspective. You know, I had a certain budget to build a house. So that was a good thing to have the resources, you know, have a realtor who knew an engineer and a builder who knew an engineer, and they all came together and looked at the property with me and actually kept me from making a huge mistake because I hadn't actually signed anything official with him, but we had been texting back and forth, and I said, yes, I agreed to a price, I will get you the money, I will pay you tomorrow or whatever. And then in the interim, you know, I think it was the builder who said, you know, you probably better get an engineer up here and look at this, and saved me from a huge mistake.
I wanted to comment on that. That was directly related to what I was thinking about. You kind of got into it. Okay, so, and this may be more for Brooke. So Brooke, regarding this thing about fill, somebody told me, somebody maybe didn't know what they're talking about, that any piece of land, like if it's that coffee field over there, you decide you're going to sell that piece of land and you clear it and you make it into a lot, you still have to wait for some period of time before you can build on it. Is that correct?
No, not necessarily. If it's been scraped, then theoretically it should be fine. But fill, no, you do have to wait for fill dirt.
So,
I don't recommend, and I'm not a builder, I've got some experience with helping clients, and I work well with one builder who doesn't speak English, so I've learned a lot from him because I do a lot of translating. But I don't think it's recommended to do fill if it's avoidable. Okay, it's just never as good as building right on the earth. And if you've, because we're in the mountains, generally it's not fill. Generally it's scraped, and you know, I think if it could wait a year, it may be better, but I don't know how big of a deal that is.
now,
That would be.
when you say scrape, it makes me think of a term we use in the States, which is called cutting.
That's probably the same thing. But
In other words, your hill is a slope like this, so you cut into the hill retain the back of the cut, and then you build on the horizontal surface that you cut out.
Or you
It's
just
called a table.
exactly, or you just cut off the top and make it flat because we are in the mountains.
You got the
Yeah.
peak,
Pretty
and
much
you
what they
cut
did
the
with
peak
mine.
off, and you
Yeah.
build on
Which
the
is
peak.
what they did with Maggie, so she didn't require any additional expense as far as retaining walls or
Thank goodness.
anything like that. What they do before you're going to build here generally is a soil study, so they have, and I know that there's probably a name for this thing, but I don't know what it is, but where they bang a big metal post down in and they see where tierra firme is. And
It's called down to refusal. The word that's used in the U.S. is refusal. You go down until basically
refusal,
it
yeah,
won't go down
it won't go
further.
anymore. Exactly, and so they
Usually
do
it's
that here as well.
Right.
Okay, well, I want to wrap everything up, and I want to thank Maggie and Brooke for taking the time to come out today and talk to us about real estate in Costa Rica, and certainly Maggie for your input on building your beautiful home from the ground up. And Brooke, I'd really like to thank you too. You were like such a godsend for us on this last rental safari that we went on, and I actually have Brooke listed on my webpage under relocation. So if any of you are going to be moving to the area or you have questions or whatever, you can go to my website and get information. I had not used Brooke prior to this latest incident that we had, but I had heard so much glowing good things about her from the other expats and other people that have used you that I just felt confident in using you. But I'd like you to say a few closing words, and please let people know, even though I'm going to put it in the description box and it's going to be on my website, but please tell people how that they can contact you if they want to use your services in the future.
Okay. I too was glad that you contacted me because we sort of met each other socially, and,
Right.
and it's always, I truly enjoy helping find people a nice place to live.
Yeah.
It's fun.
You're good at it.
I like to see what people do afterwards, so I'm very lucky to have a job that I love so much. You can get a hold of me by email, Brooke, B-R-O-O-K-E, at godutchrealty.com. You can have a look at the website, which is www.godutchrealty.com, or the American European site, which is www.american-european.net. I'm on Facebook for Gracia Real Estate. I've got my cell number, but I'm sure that that'll be posted. I can do WhatsApp. So yeah, any questions, it's absolutely my pleasure. You've got to start somewhere. I don't think there are any dumb questions, and I'm very patient because I know it's a big thing.
I can attest to that. She's still speaking to me.
I'm in the outtakes. Just want to say thank you for everything. Very informative.
Thank you.